One minute you're watching Hollywood celebrities walk the red carpet. Next, they are front and center in a courtroom bombshell that has the internet spiraling. Ashton Kutcher and Ice Cube? Not who you'd expect to lead the charge. But today, they are tearing into Diddy with evidence no one saw coming. What happened behind those sealed doors has now exploded into public chaos. It started quietly, almost too quietly for Hollywood. On a muggy Tuesday afternoon in Beverly Hills, traffic buzzed like any other day along Wilshire Boulevard. A silver Range Rover with tinted windows pulled up outside a discreet, nondescript office building. No logos, no signs. Just a bronze plaque that read Jenkins and Roth Investigations in small serif font. Few people knew this was where some of Hollywood's darkest secrets were quietly excavated, reburied, or, every now and then, brought to light. Out stepped Ashton Kutcher. Dressed in muted navy sweats and a hoodie pulled low over his forehead, he moved quickly, head down. Flanked by no assistants, no entourage. Paparazzi didn't catch it at first. Just one freelance photographer, staking out a nearby vape shop for a different celeb, caught Ashton leaving the building around 3:47 p.m. His face was taut, jaw set. His phone buzzed in his hand, but he ignored it. He climbed into his car and peeled off without saying a word. That same night, an uncredited photo surfaced on Reddit, posted under a throwaway account with a caption. Noticed this dude coming out of a PI firm. Looked rattled. Ashton? Within 2 hours, the image made its way to TMZ. The next morning, a different celebrity was caught outside the same office, this time, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Ice Cube, clad in a charcoal jacket and black sunglasses, exited the building at 11:12 a.m., glancing briefly at the cameras before slipping into a waiting SUV. Unlike Ashton, Cube didn't look nervous. He looked focused. TMZ wasted no time. By noon, the headline blared, Celebrity Cooperation? Ashton and Ice Cube visit same private investigator. What are they digging up? Social media ignited. Fans speculated wildly. A new movie? A documentary exposé? A shared legal battle? Reddit threads spun conspiracy theories, most of them far-fetched, until a verified entertainment reporter under the pseudonym at Hollywood Hunter dropped a cryptic tweet that caught fire. This isn't about roles or royalties. Think deeper. Someone's empire is about to tremble. #TMZ didn't tell you everything. Suddenly, the internet shifted. Focus narrowed. And one name started bubbling to the surface again and again. Diddy. That same evening, Diddy's PR team issued a press release to select outlets. The statement was vague, and arguably more suspicious than if they'd said nothing. As a public figure with decades of cultural contributions, Mr. Combs has always attracted baseless attacks and smear tactics. We remain confident that no amount of gossip will detract from his legacy. They didn't mention Ashton. They didn't mention Cube. But the timing was damning. Hollywood insiders whispered of an old file being dusted off and NDAs that never should have been signed. And then came the leaks, subtle at first. An anonymous email was sent to 3 journalists from a Proton Mail account simply titled, "There's footage. It's real." And they're done staying silent. Suddenly, everyone had questions. What did Ashton find? Why was Cube involved? And most importantly, why now? Ashton had been relatively low profile in recent years, known more for his venture capital work than acting. But behind the scenes, it had become known he'd been working with survivors' organizations, helping expose patterns of abuse in Hollywood that never made it past legal departments. Ice Cube, for his part, had spent years distancing himself from industry parties and executive circles, even turning down high-profile deals that felt off. And now, they were meeting at a PI's office? Within 48 hours, the pieces were coming together, fast. An unnamed source at Jenkins and Roth confirmed that 2 well-known clients had handed over sealed envelopes and electronic evidence related to events that occurred between 2005 and 2015. While they couldn't name names, they noted the case involved possible federal interest, and that one of the packages had already been delivered to a Justice Department liaison. Back online, TikTok detectives were dissecting every possible lead. One theory stood out. Ashton had allegedly held on to security footage from a 2011 party at Diddy's Miami mansion. A party that, for years, had been rumored to have gone far beyond the glitz and glamour portrayed in magazines. The problem? Until now, nobody had dared to talk about it. Not publicly. Not even anonymously. Ice Cube, some fans speculated, had his own reasons for coming forward. He'd famously walked away from certain collaborations, citing creative differences. But insiders now suggested he'd seen things, known things, that made those exits less about creativity and more about integrity. Suddenly, this wasn't just a celebrity feud. It was a ticking time bomb. Diddy's legal team went into lockdown mode. No press appearances. No events. A previously scheduled charity gala appearance was quietly cancelled, replaced by a sterile email. Mr. Combs is currently attending to personal matters. But Hollywood had smelled blood. The whispers turned to murmurs. The murmurs turned to headlines. And the headlines? They were just getting started. The private investigator's office in Beverly Hills suddenly had new security cameras installed and a rotating guard schedule. The building became the most photographed piece of real estate that week. Journalists loitered outside, hoping for even a whiff of who might walk through the door next. Ashton went dark on social media. Ice Cube posted a single, chilling Instagram story. Black background. White text. If the truth hurts, maybe it should. #No more silence. By the week's end, federal authorities had confirmed they were in possession of an electronic data package relevant to an ongoing investigation. They refused to name the subjects, but the timing couldn't be ignored. Hollywood had seen many scandals. But this one felt different. This wasn't a scandal trying to hide. This was one finally clawing its way into the light, with two unlikely allies leading the charge. And Diddy? He may have just realized he's not the one holding the cards anymore. The weight of silence was about to break, and it came in the form of a small, matte black flash drive. 3 days after Ashton Kutcher's visit to Jenkins and Roth investigations, a federal courier stepped out of a government vehicle and entered a discreet FBI field office just outside of downtown Los Angeles. Tucked into a sealed evidence bag, the flash drive was logged, timestamped, and immediately transferred to a secure digital forensics lab. Its contents were encrypted, multilayered, and embedded with timestamps that matched a very specific night, June 18, 2011. That date had lived in whispers across Hollywood gossip circles for years. It was the night of Diddy's notorious Neon Noir party in Miami, a secretive, invite-only event that allegedly stretched deep into the early morning hours. The guest list had been elite, but the NDAs were ironclad. What happened that night had never made headlines. Until now. The footage, sources say, didn't come from a cell phone or paparazzi drone. It was high-quality, surveillance level. Shot from multiple angles. Each camera appeared to be embedded discreetly inside Diddy's mansion. Ashton had apparently acquired the drive from a former security contractor who had been fired quietly in 2012 and paid hush money, money he no longer cared about. What changed his mind? That part remained a mystery. When federal agents cracked the encryption, the first clip that played showed a wide, low-lit lounge swarming with A-listers, actors, musicians, tech CEOs. Diddy could be seen at the center, holding court with a cigar in one hand and a champagne bottle in the other. But the energy in the room shifted midway through the video. The party devolved into something else. What began as glamorous soon became uncomfortable. Intimate. Then predatory. One agent reportedly said. It wasn't just partying. It was control. It was leverage. It was proof. When the footage was shown to Ice Cube in a confidential viewing room, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He didn't say much, but he didn't need to. After 10 minutes of watching, he turned to the agents and simply asked, "What's next?" He had more. Unbeknownst to the investigators, Cube had kept an archive of his own, hard drives, backed-up emails, private messages from colleagues, and screenshots from burner phones used at parties he had attended or left early from. He had once considered turning it all into a documentary. But the timing was never right. Hollywood wasn't ready. Neither was he. But seeing Ashton step forward? That changed everything. Cube retrieved his personal archive and handed it over that same day. Unlike Ashton's footage, Cube's material was less visual and more contextual. Location metadata, conflicting event timelines, guest logs, private correspondence. Combined, the two datasets painted a comprehensive and disturbing portrait of what happened not just at that 2011 party, but at several other events across years. It wasn't just one night. It was a pattern. As news trickled through legal channels, Diddy's legal team moved fast. An emergency injunction was filed to prevent the release of any material to the press. They argued privacy violations, forged timestamps, and illegally obtained content. But the judge overseeing the pretrial filings wasn't buying it. In a closed hearing, the court denied the injunction. The flash drive, along with Cube's supplemental evidence, was deemed admissible. TMZ and Variety soon got wind of the flash drive's existence but couldn't confirm its contents. That didn't stop them from speculating. The term neon noir footage trended on X within hours. Under mounting pressure, Diddy's team released another PR statement. Attempts to manipulate outdated footage to fit modern-day narratives are reckless and defamatory. Mr. Combs has spent decades building a legacy of innovation and excellence. We will fight these malicious lies with the full weight of the law. But behind the scenes, insiders said panic was setting in. Private calls between former collaborators were leaked, audio of frantic conversations, questions like, "Did you sign anything? Were you there when the cameras were rolling? Do you still talk to Ashton?" Back at the FBI office, the material was now part of a larger case file titled Operation Velvet Ledger. The name was chosen for its duality, luxury on the outside, secrets buried beneath. Federal agents began cross-referencing guests at the 2011 party with NDAs filed over the years by Bad Boy Entertainment affiliates. One pattern stood out. At least 7 individuals, assistants, models, and entertainment consultants, had signed agreements and received wire payments in the weeks following that night. 3 of them had since vanished from the industry entirely. 1 had moved overseas. 1 was deceased under suspicious circumstances. Cube, hearing this, reportedly asked to personally reach out to the survivor now living in Spain. She agreed to submit a private written statement, confirming several faces in the footage and describing what took place after the cameras went dark. The net was tightening. Then came the attempted leak. A burner X Twitter account posted a 13-second clip from the footage, showing Diddy and an unidentified man pulling aside a young woman into a dim hallway. Her face wasn't clear, but Diddy's was. The clip went viral in minutes. It was soon taken down by XS moderation team following a legal takedown request, but the damage had been done. Public trust in Diddy, already shaken, was now in freefall. Every tabloid, every gossip page, every entertainment show began pivoting their coverage. Reporters who once praised his empire were now pausing his interviews for red flags. Clips from Making the Band and Revolt TV were reanalyzed with chilling hindsight. Behind closed doors, Ashton's attorneys prepared for court. He wasn't just submitting evidence, he was preparing to testify. And Cube would stand beside him, not as a co-accuser, but as a confirmer. A witness to the systemic pattern. The courtroom date was set. The flash drive would be central to the case. But the real story wasn't just what it showed, it was what it confirmed. And who had finally decided to speak. Diddy's empire wasn't just trembling anymore. It was beginning to crack. June 9, 9:45 a.m., Los Angeles Superior Court, downtown. By the time the sun rose over the courthouse, a perimeter had already been established. Black SUVs idled at every curb. Reporters were kept at bay behind barricades. The public had been barred from attending. No cameras were allowed. No cell phones. Only verified press and essential legal teams were permitted entry. Still, the world watched, waiting for even a glimpse of what was about to unfold. Inside, the air was heavy. The trial was officially being called a preliminary evidentiary hearing, but no one in the courtroom believed it was anything short of historic. The federal case stemming from Operation Velvet Ledger had finally moved into the courtroom, and at the center of it stood a trio that no one could have predicted: Ashton Kutcher, Ice Cube, and Sean Diddy Combs. Ashton sat at the witness table, pale but composed. He wore a dark suit, no tie. His hands were clasped in front of him, knuckles white. Ice Cube sat directly behind him in the gallery, arms folded across his chest, eyes locked on Diddy. The mogul, flanked by a team of 5 attorneys, appeared stoic. But under the table, his foot tapped relentlessly. "Mr. Kutcher, you're under oath," the judge said, breaking the silence. "Please begin." Ashton inhaled deeply. "I didn't come here today to relive the past. I came to put an end to it." The courtroom stirred. He continued, "In 2011, I attended a party at Mr. Combs's Miami residence. I was told it would be a networking event, exclusive, clean, professional. It was none of those things." He detailed how he had been ushered into a dimly lit lounge where phones were confiscated at the door and security watched every move. Guests were offered drinks laced with enhancers, as one handler put it. He didn't drink that night, something he'd now come to see as providential. Ashton's voice cracked but did not waver as he described seeing women, some barely 18, being separated from the group and taken upstairs. He remembered the look on one young woman's face. "She wasn't drunk," he said. "She was scared." Then came the reveal. "I was handed a flash drive by someone who used to work for Mr. Combs," Ashton said. He said, You'll need this one day. For 10 years I sat on it, unsure, afraid, honestly, until now. Diddy's lead attorney sprang up, objecting to emotional testimony and hearsay. The judge overruled it, his stating first-hand events. Let him finish. The prosecution stood. They entered the flash drive into evidence and requested permission to play selected clips. The judge hesitated. We are in closed court, but I must remind all present, this content is sensitive and, if leaked, could result in criminal penalties. Lights dimmed slightly as the screen flickered to life. The footage began. The room fell into absolute silence. The first clip showed Ashton and Cube in the lounge, mingling with executives and artists. Casual. Normal. The kind of scene people posted on Instagram. But the camera shifted, fixed on Diddy and his inner circle guiding a small group of young women into another room. One girl resisted. She tried to return to the main lounge. A security guard stopped her. Ashton could be seen in the corner of the room, turning to watch, his face already tensing. The second clip was even more damning. A hidden camera in a hallway showed Diddy speaking with another celebrity, identity blurred, exchanging what appeared to be small envelopes. There was no audio, but lip readers would later confirm phrases like "keep them calm" and "this buys silence." Someone in the courtroom audibly gasped. The defense team demanded the clip be stopped. Unverified. Misleading, they barked. The judge denied the motion. And then it was Ice Cube's turn. Calm, methodical, and razor-sharp, he took the stand and laid it all out. I've been in this industry long enough to know the games people play, he began. And I saw things at that party, at several parties, that didn't sit right. I didn't speak out then. I thought silence would protect me. But it only protected him. Cube confirmed the authenticity of the footage. Not just that night, but others. He spoke of an unofficial circle in the industry where loyalty meant silence, and access meant compliance. You either played along or you got blackballed, he said. Well, I'm done playing. Diddy sat motionless, his expression unreadable. But his attorney leaned over, whispering urgently. When the cross-examination began, Diddy's lawyers tried everything, questioning Ashton's motives, attacking Cube's timeline, suggesting the footage could be manipulated. Cube didn't flinch. You think I came here with doctored clips? He shot back. I came here with truth. You should try it. The room froze. 4 hours, the court sifted through testimony and video. The judge took notes, expression neutral but posture rigid. The final clip shown was brief, 10 seconds of a young woman being led into a room by 2 men, one confirmed to be on Diddy's payroll. The door closed. The camera cut out. Nothing graphic was shown. It didn't need to be. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. The kind of silence that feels like a held breath before the world changes. When the judge called for a recess, no one moved. Diddy stood slowly, his lawyers ushering him toward the side exit. Outside, word had leaked. A court clerk had texted a journalist. That journalist had posted 2 words. Video played. The internet ignited. #Ashton speaks and #Cube testifies trended within minutes. Every news site scrambled to prepare updates. The court's decision to keep the hearing closed had delayed the flood, but it hadn't stopped it. By the end of the day, even celebrities known for their loyalty to Diddy had begun to issue carefully worded statements. Neutral. Vague. Nervous. The judge announced that due to the seriousness of the evidence presented, the hearing would proceed to a full trial, criminal charges pending. Media would be allowed in for the next phase. Transparency, the judge said, was in the public's interest. Diddy would have to face this storm in full view. As Ashton exited the building, escorted by U.S. Marshals, a reporter shouted a question. Do you feel vindicated? Ashton paused, turned slightly, and replied, Not yet. He got into the car. Ice Cube followed behind. The courtroom may have emptied, but the war had only just begun. The courtroom doors hadn't even cooled from closing before Hollywood began to fracture. At 3:18 p.m., just 2 hours after Ashton and Ice Cube's testimonies ended, the first domino fell. A-list actor Bradley Hendricks, once a regular fixture at Diddy-hosted events, quietly unfollowed him on Instagram. Minutes later, musician Kira Vance archived every post featuring the mogul. Then came the cascade. By midnight, a rolling wave of celebrity unfollows, statement withdrawals, and brand suspensions made it clear the industry wasn't just distancing itself, it was purging. Social media feeds were flooded with screen recordings of Diddy's name disappearing from follower lists, like a slow, digital excommunication. But it wasn't just stars jumping ship. Behind the scenes, Bad Boy Entertainment faced an exodus. Ciroc, the vodka brand long intertwined with Diddy's public persona, announced it was placing all promotional campaigns on pause pending further review. Revolt TV, the media network he helped found, disabled its comments section across all platforms after a flood of questions and demands for statements overwhelmed every post. One internal source revealed that multiple advertisers had pulled out within 48 hours, citing reputational risk. For years, Diddy had been seen as untouchable, a mogul who had not only outlasted his contemporaries but shaped pop culture itself. But in the wake of the courtroom footage, that empire began to rot from the inside. It wasn't just about what was shown. It was the confirmation. The gut punch. The realization that decades of whispered allegations, NDAs, and behind-the-scenes deals had finally broken through the Hollywood firewall. Then Ice Cube lit the match. On the morning of the third day after court, Cube posted a thread on X, formerly Twitter. No emojis. No hashtags. Just words. Raw. Brutal. 4 years. We laughed it off. Said industry parties are wild. But that wasn't wild. It was criminal. The silence made us complicit. But we're not quiet anymore. If you were there, and you stayed silent, you're part of this too. Step up. Or get out the way. The thread exploded. Within hours, the hashtag #culture of silence was trending worldwide. Fans, former insiders, and even former employees began speaking out. Anonymous Reddit armors appeared, some credible, some suspect. But the volume was impossible to ignore. More shocking still, several survivors, previously hidden behind NDAs, began contacting legal teams tied to Operation Velvet Ledger. At least 2 women filed motions to have their confidentiality agreements invalidated, claiming they were signed under coercion. One wrote in her statement, "I was 19. They told me it was just after-hours fun. They gave me champagne. They took my phone. And they said if I ever spoke, I'd never work again." I believed them. Meanwhile, Diddy's team scrambled behind the scenes. Internal emails, leaked to the Hollywood Observer, revealed a PR firm in crisis. Damage containment no longer viable. Reframe as a targeted campaign. Emphasize cultural contribution, philanthropy, and legacy. Mobilize loyal voices immediately. The problem? Loyal voices were evaporating. An unnamed former executive at Bad Boy told the press there were people ready to speak for him. But then they saw the video. And now? Phones are off. Nobody's returning calls. On The View, co-host Sonny Marquez cautiously said, "We have to stop pretending powerful men are incapable of terrible things just because they also made great music." The segment went viral, racking up 9 million views in 24 hours. That evening, TMZ released a follow-up exposé. Titled The Empire Behind the Curtain, it detailed years of secret settlements made by Diddy's companies, many involving young women, most involving NDAs. The story was meticulously sourced, cross-verified with court documents, and it ended with a chilling quote from a former assistant. "He always said the party never stopped. Now it has." The fallout spilled beyond Diddy himself. Executives, artists, and producers who had stood beside him for years found themselves facing scrutiny. Old photos were recirculated. Past tweets dissected. Collaborations were now potential liabilities. The Grammy Museum removed a planned Diddy exhibit indefinitely. A high-profile fashion label cancelled its upcoming capsule collection with him. Even an upcoming Netflix documentary featuring Diddy as an executive producer quietly removed his name from promotional materials. Hollywood, for all its performative outrage, is ultimately driven by perception, and Diddy's perception had shifted from mogul to pariah. But amid the unraveling, some tried to rally around him. A small cadre of defenders, mostly from legacy media and longtime collaborators, issued neutral statements. "We support due process. We believe in second chances. We weren't there." One post by an aging rap legend read, "You're acting like saints. We all been at those parties." The backlash was immediate. "You been there?" one viral reply asked. "Thanks for confirming." Ice Cube, watching the reactions unfold, doubled down. He posted a teaser clip for a mini-documentary titled Truth Over Fame. Just 42 seconds long, it featured a voiceover of Cube saying, "We built this culture with beats and verses. But the truth? That's the baseline no one wanted to hear." It ended with a message on a black screen. Premieres in 7 days. No filters. No handlers. Just facts. Ashton, still quiet on social media, released a short message through his lawyer. This isn't about revenge. It's about responsibility. But he didn't need to say more. Every tabloid was dissecting his courtroom testimony. Every survivor felt a little more emboldened. Every silence around Diddy felt just a bit more damning. In just under a week, a man once hailed as hip-hop royalty now found himself bleeding influence at every turn. Yet the most devastating blow hadn't even landed yet. The survivors were preparing to speak. And the trial wasn't over. Hollywood, shaken by the speed of its own reckoning, began to brace for the next chapter, not just of Diddy's downfall, but of what it would mean for an industry built on secrets. The courtroom had returned to a tense routine. Testimony, rebuttal, objections, and slow, careful reveals. But on the 7th day of proceedings, something happened that wasn't on the docket. Something that would send every media outlet scrambling for updates and cause Diddy's legal team to panic behind closed doors. It began with a whisper. A bailiff approached the bench mid-morning, handing the judge a folded slip of paper. Judge Lawson opened it, raised an eyebrow, and then looked directly at the prosecution table. We've received an urgent request from a newly identified individual who claims to have material relevance to this case, she said calmly. She has not been subpoenaed, nor was she previously disclosed by either side. She is present in the courthouse now. Diddy's lead attorney immediately objected. Your Honor, we are not prepared to question or cross-examine an unscheduled witness. This is a clear violation of procedural fairness. Judge Lawson tapped her gavel once. You'll have your chance to question. But I intend to hear what she has to say. The name was announced quietly, Dana Collins. A name that made Ashton's posture jolt upright. Dana had been a junior producer on Making the Band, the early 2000s reality show that cemented Diddy's cultural dominance. She'd disappeared from the industry in 2011, just months after the Neon Noir party. A collective breath was held as she walked into the courtroom. Her presence was striking. Late 30s, no makeup, wearing a plain navy blazer and slacks. Her hair was pinned back, and her hands were trembling slightly. But her eyes didn't blink once as she took the stand. I wasn't planning to do this, she began, her voice soft but clear. I told myself for years that I'd moved on. That silence was the only way to survive. As she continued, the silence in the courtroom deepened. Dana detailed her time on Making the Band, the grueling hours, the pressure to produce conflict, the constant surveillance. But behind the reality show facade, she said, there was another layer. I was asked, ordered, to destroy footage. Footage that showed contestants being harassed, manipulated, and in some cases, touched inappropriately by crew and visiting guests. She paused, then locked eyes with Diddy across the room. One of those guests was you. A low murmur rippled across the room. The judge raised her hand for silence. Dana then reached into her coat pocket and produced a small folder. In 2010, I backed up one of the deleted hard drives onto a personal flash drive. I've had it ever since. I was too scared to turn it in. Until now. The folder contained screenshots of raw production logs, time-stamped emails from senior producers, and a personal memo from a Bad Boy Entertainment executive referring to Dana directly. Make sure DC handles the archive. The clips from Room B. Get rid of them. Tonight. The courtroom felt like it had tilted. Diddy's lawyers huddled, whispering furiously. His lead attorney stood again. Objection. We have no way to verify the authenticity or chain of custody of this material. But Dana had anticipated this. She'd already worked with the federal team overseeing Operation Velvet Ledger. A forensic tech from the FBI was brought to the stand and confirmed the documents were real, time-stamped, untampered, and there was more. Dana also provided excerpts from her text messages, stored on a backup SIM, between herself and Ashton in 2011. Messages that suggested Ashton had expressed concern over a specific contestant during the production of the show's final season. Ashton, that girl didn't look okay. Why'd she get cut? Dana, she wouldn't go upstairs. They made a call. Gone by morning. Diddy's legal team exploded. Fabrication. Taken out of context. Judge Lawson didn't buy it. She instructed both sides to stand down. Ashton, now visibly emotional, confirmed that he'd sent that message. I didn't understand what was happening back then. But I knew something felt wrong. The final blow came when Dana spoke of hush money. In 2011, I was offered $250,000 to sign an NDA and walk away. I took the money, she said flatly. But I never signed the NDA. I walked out of that room and never came back. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. One of the prosecution attorneys leaned over to the lead investigator and whispered, "That's the smoking gun." Diddy didn't speak. But his expression changed, just slightly. His jaw clenched. His hands stopped tapping. For the first time since the trial began, he looked cornered. The judge called a recess. Outside the courthouse, chaos. Within 30 minutes, Dana Collins's name was trending globally. #DanaSpeaks shot to the top of X, followed by #RoomB and #VelvetLedger. Journalists scrambled to update their stories. Talk shows broke their normal schedules to cover the live updates. Former Making the Band contestants began reaching out to media outlets, some publicly, others through their legal teams. One woman posted a cryptic story on Instagram with the caption, "It's about time someone told the truth. Thank you, Dana." The internet didn't wait. Sleuths identified which season Dana had worked on. Threads emerged analyzing every episode for clues. Reddit users pointed out strange edits, unexplained cast removals, and eerie clips that, in hindsight, felt like veiled warnings. Back in the courtroom, the prosecution filed a motion to expand the scope of the case, citing newly verified evidence of systemic abuse and material suppression. Judge Lawson agreed to review it the following morning. Diddy's team was silent. They had no prepared statement. No denial. No spin. For all their power, they hadn't seen Dana coming. That evening, Dana released a written statement via her lawyer. "This isn't about revenge. This is about responsibility. And the truth has waited long enough." As the sun set over Los Angeles, the entertainment capital of the world held its breath. The witness nobody expected had arrived. And she had changed everything. By the next morning, it was impossible to escape the story. From cable news to TikTok, the trial had erupted into the global conversation. Clips from Ashton's and Ice Cube's testimonies were recreated in animated court reenactments. Dana Collins's name was now etched into trending hashtags like #DanaSpeaks, #VelvetLedger, and #RoomB Overnight, the story had shifted from an isolated courtroom drama to a cultural reckoning. But as with any reckoning, the reactions were fractured, raw, passionate, and in some cases, ugly. Online, fans and celebrities alike scrambled to take sides. While many stood in support of Ashton, Cube, and Dana, others clung to denial, confusion, or outright resistance. And at the center of it all stood Diddy, silent, out of sight, but still orbiting every conversation like a collapsed star pulling everything inward. That morning, Mila Kunis broke her silence. She released a brief, emotionally restrained statement via Instagram stories. "I've known Ashton for 2 decades. He's not perfect, but he doesn't lie. I support his choice to speak up. That takes courage, more than most of us realize." The post went viral instantly, and reactions were divided. Some praised her for speaking up. Others accused her of damage control. But what mattered most was that the silence among Hollywood's A-listers had begun to crack. By midday, a second statement dropped, this time from a group of former Making the Band contestants. 6 women and 3 men co-signed a public letter, posted to Medium, detailing what they described as routine coercion, manipulation, and emotional abuse during their time filming the show. One section read, "We were kids. We wanted fame. And we were made to believe that the price of success was obedience. Looking back, we were prey." Within hours, Diddy's legal team responded with a cease-and-desist letter to Medium and demanded the post's removal. But it was too late. Screenshots had already gone viral, reposted across thousands of platforms. The Streisand effect was in full swing. Meanwhile, Ice Cube took to YouTube with the release of his promised short documentary, Truth Over Fame. Clocking in at just under 18 minutes, the video opened with a black screen and his gravelly voice. The game was never fair. But now, the players are talking. The doc featured old interviews, unreleased behind-the-scenes footage from events dating back to the early 2000s, and a sit-down with a blurred-out survivor who had declined to testify in court. Cube didn't narrate much. He let the facts speak. The documentary's impact was immediate, praised for its honesty, condemned by Diddy's defenders, and dissected line by line by media analysts. It racked up 12 million views within the first 24 hours. But support wasn't universal. In a surprising twist, a few prominent figures came forward to defend Diddy, some out of loyalty, others from a place of self-interest. Veteran rapper Main Ray's posted a clip calling the allegations a modern-day witch hunt and insisting, "This man built an empire. You're trying to tear him down for clout." The backlash to that clip was swift. "You just told on yourself," one top comment read. The divide deepened when Diddy's team attempted a classic counterstrike by going after Ashton. Late that night, an anonymous source leaked several private emails from Ashton's early tech investments, suggesting impropriety and conflicts of interest. The emails had nothing to do with the trial, but tabloids pounced. "Kutcher's past business scandals emerge amid trial," read the Daily Gazer headline. But the attempt fell flat. Users online quickly dissected the leak, revealing that the emails were years old and had already been publicly addressed in SEC filings. Worse, it made Diddy's team look desperate. The hashtag #retaliation tactics began trending. Even some of Diddy's defenders started stepping back. As for Ashton, he issued a single-line statement through his legal team. "This is what they do when they are cornered." But the biggest backlash came not from celebrities, but from the public. Fan accounts once dedicated to celebrating Diddy's legacy began deactivating. Radio stations in 3 major cities, Atlanta, Chicago, and San Francisco, announced they would pause airing Diddy's tracks until the trial concluded. Several music festivals removed his name from legacy stages. The BET Awards, which had been preparing a 25-year tribute to his career, officially postponed the segment. A producer from the show, speaking anonymously, said, "We don't want to celebrate someone while we're still unpacking who they really are." And then came the sponsors. Ciroc officially terminated its brand partnership. Sean John, the fashion label Diddy once founded, scrubbed all references to him from its website. The fallout hit harder than expected, not just for Diddy, but for the infrastructure around him. Personal assistants, stylists, publicists, even ghostwriters were suddenly unemployable by association. A cultural implosion in real time. Still, not everyone was focused on the collapse. Many online voices were focused on the survivors, the people behind the footage, the women in Room B, the contestants who never made it past the pilot episodes. Accounts were created to share their stories, their reflections, and in many cases, their first public statement since leaving the industry. One tweet from an anonymous former contestant read, "I thought silence was strength. Now I know that silence was survival. Speaking is the real strength." It was reposted 450,000 times. Dana Collins, meanwhile, issued a second statement, this time, a video. Filmed from her living room, with no music or editing, she looked into the camera and simply said, "They told me no one would believe me. That people would call me bitter, or crazy, or a liar. But I told the truth. And I'm still here." The clip was raw, unpolished, and it hit like a gut punch. By nightfall, a GoFundMe set up for other former crew members and whistleblowers had raised over $250,000. As the trial continued, the divide between those clinging to the past and those willing to confront it became clearer. Diddy hadn't spoken publicly. No video, no post, no livestream denial. Just court appearances and a deepening silence. But one thing had become undeniable. The days of selective outrage were over. The industry had drawn a line. And as one survivor put it in a viral post, "You don't get to DJ the afterparty when the house is still burning." They called it the tape that broke the silence. On day 12 of the trial, just as the courtroom had begun to settle into a steady rhythm of testimonies and cross-examinations, the prosecution announced they had received new, unverified material overnight, a surveillance recording from a 2005 nightclub in Atlanta. The defense objected immediately, demanding it be dismissed as inadmissible due to its late arrival and unclear source. But Judge Lawson leaned forward, fingers steepled under her chin, and made her decision without hesitation. "If the material is authentic and relevant," she said, "this court will hear it." Everyone leaned in. The footage, submitted by an anonymous source who claimed to have once handled private security for industry events, had arrived via a secured digital portal. Before showing it, the prosecution called a forensic technician from the Department of Justice to testify. The file's metadata, timestamps, and original device signature had been verified. The footage was not doctored. It was real. The lights dimmed. The courtroom held its collective breath. The video began. Grainy, black and white. A crowded lounge area in a now-defunct Atlanta nightclub. Music pulsed faintly under the camera's feed. Dozens of recognizable faces flickered through the frame, actors, producers, musicians. And there, unmistakably, stood Diddy. He wasn't at the bar. He wasn't on the dance floor. He was in a roped-off section with two young women, both of whom looked visibly uncomfortable. The sound was muffled, but clear enough to hear snippets. "You want this deal, don't you?" "It's just a conversation." No cameras. No stories. Just you, me, and trust. At one point, Diddy handed something to a third man, likely cash. Then he leaned in, whispering something to one of the girls. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just froze. The screen went black. The courtroom sat in stunned, suffocating silence. Judge Lawson looked visibly disturbed. So did some of the jurors. Ashton pressed his hand to his forehead. Ice Cube stared straight ahead, his face carved from stone. When the lights came back on, the prosecution made their case. This footage doesn't just confirm a pattern. It shows that these behaviors span over a decade. It corroborates the survivor accounts from 2011. And it ties directly into financial hush arrangements that were made through shell companies operating out of Atlanta and Miami. Diddy's team scrambled. They requested an immediate side-by, claiming the footage had no direct link to the 2011 incident. But the judge overruled. If it illustrates a behavioral pattern tied to this defendant, it stays. As journalists received the court-approved summary transcript of the video, media outlets exploded. 2005 club clip may shift entire trial, red deadline. Pattern of coercion? Diddy tied to earlier incident in new evidence, wrote Rolling Stone. But the real moment came during Ice Cube's return to the stand. He had requested one final statement. The judge allowed it. Cube rose, buttoned his coat, and addressed the court, and the world watching through courtroom sketches, live updates, and transcriptions. "I've been in this industry since I was a teenager. I've seen the glamour. I've seen the games. I've seen the people who win because they prey on those too scared to speak." He glanced at Diddy. "Some of us knew. We stayed quiet. We made excuses. We told ourselves it wasn't our place. But let me say this now, so nobody can ever say they didn't hear it." He paused. The room leaned in. "Some of us stayed quiet too long. Not anymore." He stepped down. The court adjourned for the day, but the damage had been done. The prosecution had tied past and present together in a single damning thread. Ashton's testimony was no longer isolated. Dana's documents were no longer anecdotal. Cube's words were now fuel to a fire that couldn't be ignored. By that night, nearly every major news network had pivoted their top story to the Atlanta footage. The woman seen in the clip was identified within hours, now in her mid-30s, living under a different name. She released a statement through her attorney. "That night haunted me for years. I never thought it would come back. But maybe now it will mean something." Social media responded with force. Hashtags like #TheTape and #Atlanta 2005 surged. TikTok creators analyzed the clip second by second. Podcasts held emergency live streams. Major artists canceled planned collaborations. Radio hosts debated removing Diddy from permanent rotation. A major sneaker brand publicly cut ties. Hollywood had seen scandal before. But this wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about structure, about who got away with what, and for how long. And for the first time since the trial began, the press was allowed in the courtroom. Judge Lawson made her ruling the following morning. "Given the gravity of the claims and the public interest involved, I am allowing accredited media to be present for the remainder of the trial. Transparency is no longer optional." Dozens of journalists rushed to secure access. Artists who had stayed silent began issuing apologies, some sincere, others clearly strategic. One former label executive appeared on Nightline, visibly shaken. "We used to joke about what went on at Combs events. We said it like it was part of the job. Now I realize how sick that was." Ashton, Cube, and Dana became symbols, unlikely ones, of a larger reckoning. Not just with Diddy, but with the unspoken rules of power in entertainment. And Diddy? He hadn't been seen in public since the footage aired. Court sketch artists showed him sitting with his head low, jaw clenched, occasionally whispering to his lawyers. No interviews. No social media. Just silence, and the unmistakable sound of a legacy shattering. The turning point had arrived. And there was no turning back. By the time the jury was sent into deliberation, downtown Los Angeles had transformed into a media war zone. Helicopters circled overhead. Satellite trucks clogged the courthouse perimeter. Crowds gathered behind barricades, holding handmade signs. Some reading "Justice for Room B" and "Cube spoke truth," others defiantly defending Diddy with slogans like "innocent until proven." Reporters gave live updates every hour, even when nothing changed. Inside, the jury room buzzed with pressure. 12 individuals, now household names to news junkies, sat in silence as the clerk handed them their instructions. The prosecution had outlined a mountain of evidence: first-hand testimony, corroborated survivor statements, timeline consistency, digital metadata, financial transactions, the surveillance footage from Miami and Atlanta, and damning documentation from Dana Collins. The defense had made their case too, attempting to poke holes, discredit motives, and call the footage out of context. But it was clear the narrative had already shifted. The jurors reviewed transcripts and exhibits for 7 straight hours. No lunch break. Barely any conversation. Just a haunting consensus settling over the room. At 5:12 p.m., the court was notified. Verdict reached. Inside the courtroom, the energy turned electric. Phones buzzed silently in lawyers' pockets. News desks scrambled. Ashton, seated between his attorneys, bowed his head. Ice Cube leaned forward, hands clasped like a coach before a final whistle. Dana, watching from the gallery, exhaled quietly but did not smile. Diddy sat still, unblinking, his jaw locked in place. The judge entered. The courtroom rose. Then the clerk stood. In the matter of Sean Combs versus the people of California, on the charges of coercion, suppression of evidence, and willful misconduct, this jury finds the defendant liable. The word struck like a thunderclap. Gasps. A cry from the back. Diddy's legal team immediately requested to poll the jury. One by one, each juror repeated their answer: liable. 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 On charge after charge, the pattern held. While this was a civil trial, criminal charges still under federal investigation, the verdict was damning. Diddy had not only been found responsible, but the court also confirmed that punitive damages would be pursued in a separate hearing. Survivors would now be eligible to file lawsuits backed by this judgment. And any forthcoming criminal indictments would lean on this outcome as a precedent. The judge's final words echoed with weight. Mr. Combs, this court finds you responsible for a sustained pattern of manipulation and abuse that has caused lasting harm to multiple individuals across this industry. This verdict does not restore what was taken, but it may mark where the silence ends. Diddy was escorted out through a private exit. No press conference. No statement. His security detail, once 12 strong, had dwindled to 3. Ashton exited through the front steps. This time, there was no hiding. Cameras captured the moment. No sunglasses, no cap. Just him, walking down the steps flanked by attorneys, into a sea of flashing lights. A reporter shouted, "How does it feel?" Ashton paused. "It's not about how I feel. It's about what we finally heard." Behind him, Ice Cube followed, nodding to the crowd. A woman yelled, "Thank you, Cube," and he raised a clenched fist. Dana exited last. She received a quiet standing ovation from those outside the barricades. Some people cried. Others clapped. One protester with a homemade sign that read "Dana equals courage" was interviewed on 5 major news outlets before the night was over. And then came the aftershock. Within 24 hours of the verdict, 4 new civil suits were filed by previously silenced individuals. Bad Boy Entertainment's board voted to freeze all operations until further notice. 2 documentaries were greenlit, one by HBO, the other by Hulu. Streaming platforms began reviewing whether to remove Diddy's content or attach a content warning. The Recording Academy released a statement saying it was reviewing past honors in light of new evidence. But more than the lawsuits, more than the media frenzy, it was the ripple effect that mattered. Executives who had long turned a blind eye were suddenly nervous. HR departments across every major label began conducting internal reviews. Former assistants and showrunners started releasing statements on their personal experiences. Whispers about other powerful figures, the ones who'd attended the same parties, made the same threats, grew louder. Hollywood was changing. Rapidly. Back on social media, Ashton posted a single message on Threads. To those still afraid to speak, you're not alone anymore. Ice Cube, never one to mince words, followed with, "This ain't the end. This is just the start. Look around you." The silence is breaking everywhere. Dana posted a short video. No filters. No makeup. Just her, reading a line from her old production diary. "I thought no one would ever care. I was wrong." The video received over 14 million views in 2 days. Public discourse shifted again. Podcasts, panels, And think pieces no longer asked if Diddy was guilty, but rather how many others had been protected by the same machine. What about the enablers? The gatekeepers? The ones who knew and stayed silent? And the biggest question, who's next? In the end, it wasn't just about Diddy. It wasn't just about a trial. It was about truth. Delayed, maybe, but no longer denied. The industry wouldn't be the same. The survivors? They weren't going anywhere.